So, welcome to Project You, Project Me, where we speak to people like you and like me about service, about transition, and about what it's really like to work in business and what business is like. And today we've been joined by a good friend of the FTGs, in Neil Fraser from NSL Global, who've been a partner with the FTG for around 3 to 4 years now. So we know a lot about them. But Neil, it's great to have you here. How are you?
Yeah, good, John. Thanks so much, and thanks for inviting me on.
No, it's great to see you, and I know how busy you are, so we won't keep you for the next 5 hours. We'll just do 15, 20
No
minutes so
panic.
that people can get a good understanding. But Neil, sometimes people will want to understand who you are. If somebody's presenting on a business and what your background is, it's always nice to tell them. So could you give us a little bit of information about maybe your past, what you do now, what your job is, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, briefly, like many of the people who come to you for assistance and help, and thanks for everything you do for service leavers. So I did 26 years in the army from 1987, just at the back end of the first Cold War, to about 2013. Went through various jobs, squadron, regiment, etc. And spent a lot of time in and around satellite communications. So both as a provider in theatre, so I did three Afghan tours, like many of our generation.
Yeah.
2001 to entry to Kabul, commanding 216 parachute squadron, a signal squadron. 4 and 5 with the Americans, and 8 and 9 basically running my regiment, providing all the UK comms. So I've done a lot of sort of deployed operational stuff with satellite communications. Back end of my military career, I ran the Skynet 5 team, so I was responsible for all UK MOD's military and commercial satellite communications and all the long haul radio projects and services. So that was as a full colonel, and then left to go to industry, and it was the kind of right time for me. So
Yeah.
uh, so I kind of when I talk at conferences and I say I've been a user of stuff, deployed, I've delivered it on behalf of the MOD, and now I've had 12 years or so with industry. I left and joined a company called Viasat.
Okay.
So a US company, and I was their first specific UK SATCOM employee, looking at their sort of UK space ambition, and they bought Inmarsat a couple of years ago,
Okay.
and then left about 6 years ago during a big bid to join NSSL Global, where I've been. So I'm on my second job after leaving the military. So that's probably enough on me.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, how did you get into NSL Global? But you kind of answered that for me. But, now that we know a bit about you and the kind of arena, the sector, if you like, that many military people, I've got no doubt, can go into, um, with the qualities and the skills that they,
Yeah,
that they
absolutely.
have
Yeah.
and the experience, what do you do, personally as a job? But what does actually NSL Global do, um, in a wider context?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, how did I leave? How did I leave? So I was in a quite a technical and program role anyway, and then obviously engaged with a lot of industry companies. Um, so that kind of transition was really interesting for me. And I'll say something because it's quite an interesting phrase. And I'll come back to your question. So I was told by the US guy that hired me, A team people hire A team players, and B team people hire C team players. And you're a footballer. So you know what I mean. So good people will hire the best people. And I think when people are transitioning, that's something they've got to think about. The person interviewing them is thinking about, okay, how is this person going to affect their organization? How are they going to affect
Yeah.
them? So I've been lucky to stay in a kind of technology and an experience that I've been able to bring value from being an end user and customer. So I think if I touch on space and SATCOM more widely as a general field, because there's lots of various companies within it and they all have different parts in that ecosystem. So I think space does three things for defense. I think it helps people know where things are and where they are. So that's sort of GPS or global navigation
Okay.
satellite systems. It lets people know what's going on around them. So that's Earth observation, or for us, ISR. So, space intelligence and aware and imagery. And then lets you communicate, and that's SATCOM. And that's largely the area the military has most direct use of is the
Yeah.
communications role. So, and the UK space industry is about 40,000 people. Relatively good growth, about 4.5% per annum in terms of growth, and it's fundamental to the commercial and security of the UK. So people leaving into that industry know they're going to something that A is interesting and B brings a lot of value. And it's been through significant change. And that's the other thing I think is good for people who leave in the military. Sometimes we're not necessarily working with the latest technology in terms of our communication systems
Hmm.
for military, the sort of specific bespoke
Yeah.
systems, but some of the commercial technology has just, moved on leaps and bounds. So, obviously with SpaceX, with Starlink and Starshield, with some of the other low Earth orbit constellations, there's a whole load of new technology, new terminals that's really interesting to get to grips with.
Mm.
So, so as a place to go post service, there's lots and lots of roles, and we'll maybe come back to how those position. Um, I think NSSL Global itself, so we don't fly satellites. I always say that at the outset, we're a service provider and integrator. So what we do is we lease capacity on satellites. So we lease them from multiple providers, Eutelsat, OneWeb, SpaceX, Intelsat, SES, lots of other companies where we lease capacity, and we effectively land that all over the globe. We have our own anchor stations. And for those that are sort of into satellite communications, we have anchor stations across the geo belts, the geostationary belt, in the US, Cyprus, Australia, and UK. And we bring all that traffic together, and we run a sort of terrestrial network that maneuvers that around the world. And then we overlay low Earth orbit services over that. So we integrate all that together with terminals, and then we provide those services to our customers. Um, so we have two customer sets. One is commercial maritime, so oil tankers, cargo vessels, that kind of stuff. And the other is defense and government. And then we provide terminals to deliver those services and assurance. That's kind of what we do. And maybe depending where you go, we'll talk about where we are and how big we are and that kind of stuff.
So if people outside of the military, business, commercial businesses are using things that are a bit more advanced, shall we say, how does that fit for somebody who's leaving the military who may be, at a high level within IT, tech, cyber, communication, whatever that is? How do they kind of transfer across? Is it a steady and a learn environment, or is what they're doing pretty easy to pick up the new stuff?
I mean, clearly we tend to recruit engineers and project managers from the military. So we're tending to recruit people who might have been, communications technicians in various roles in the military. So their core skills and their core experience is all relevant and all valid. And in some cases, particularly in the last, 5, 10 years or so, we've seen a lot of commercial satellite communications used by defence.
Mhm.
And we always have used that. Huge amounts of commercial SATCOM were deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Every single Royal Navy ship sits on the networks we provide. So they're exposed to some of that kit now. And I think basically, as they come into an organization, we're quite an engineering centric company. We don't have a lot of, we're not big on sort of sales and all that kind of stuff. I mean, clearly we're not charities, but we're engineering and project centric because we're an integrator. So quite often it's about how do you take Terminal A on one service, Terminal B on another service. How do you bring that all together to balance? And you'll know pace and swap. How do you balance providing lots of options to people in harm's way? So making sure that they've got primary, alternate, contingent, and emergency services,
Mhm.
which could be different satellite services, could be radio, could be LTE. And how do you balance that with size, weight, and power on individual soldiers, vehicles, small craft, etc. And so having people from the military who understand what it's like to be
Mm.
having to deliver lots of solutions, but having pressure on power, logistics, is really useful because they can kind of have a sense about how all these things plug together. So I think there's an evolving thing. I think generally people are, able to learn. There's constantly new solutions coming to market, and one thing that's really been obvious, and I guess I've been around the industry since I joined the Corps, sort of 19 or so, when Satcom was done a very specialist business. It's now a more of a generalist business. The technology has changed beyond recognition, and so a lot more people have greater expectations,
Mm.
and there's also a number of different options they can bring to bear. So it's a really interesting area. We tend, we have some really, really deep expert engineers. We have a lot of field service engineers, and they're
Yeah.
constantly be able to evolve with new technology to make sure we're doing the right thing. So yeah, I think it's basically learning, a lot of hands-on.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting to listen to the project management side and all those kind of things, which a lot of people listening to this probably looking to go into it
Yeah.
at some level. But clearly this is worldwide. And have you got opportunities worldwide, or would you say your opportunities are more stable in the UK or
Yeah,
Europe?
I mean, NSSL Global is our sort of name. We span out of nearer sat phones a long time ago, and clearly our customers operate globally. I mean, all the way north, all the way south, and so technically we provide coverage through various different satellite constellations. We're a UK company, so we're probably we're 250 odd strong.
Okay.
Over half of those in UK. Most people are based near Gatwick. We have our sort of group headquarters in a place called Red Hill. So and that's our kind of, most of our logistics, finance, the group CEO, and most of our MOD engineers and project managers
Yeah.
based there. We've got about 25 people based out of Newcastle.
Okay.
They don't all live in Newcastle, but Newcastle manages our deployable engineers. People live all the way from Faslane to Cornwall, and they deploy a lot
Wherever
during
needed.
the year, particularly with what's been going on last year with Carrier Strike Group, and obviously what's happening with world events this year.
Hmm.
They tend to deploy all over the globe. Got a few in Cornwall, a few in Portsmouth, and then we've got a bunch in Germany, 55 in Germany, 25 in Norway, a dozen or so in Denmark and the Netherlands, and a few in Singapore. Now, that's not to say that a service leaver is going to jump into those locations, directly, but we have Brits in the German office. We have Brits, or
Okay.
we have had Brits in our offices in Oslo. So yeah, there's global opportunity, and certainly our engineering and our project management team in the UK go overseas a lot. They're managing projects overseas. We work across the group, so we might bring together matrix teams with people from Germany, people from UK, people from elsewhere where we've got an end customer. I mean, our biggest customer is UK Defence, UK MOD. We do a lot for the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office. We provide a lot of their comms globally, particularly OneWeb services of late. We won a big contract last year for that. And then we also support the Bundeswehr, so the German Armed Forces, our second biggest customer,
All right. Okay.
Danish, Polish, Swedish Coast Guard. So there's a lot of opportunity that's international.
Yeah. So if somebody was leaving the military, if we talk about a service leaver, for example, at what point are you really interested in them?
Yes, this comes up on your webinars, which I think are brilliant, and I try and hang around after I've done my little pitch on those. But um, I think my message to anyone would be start early. And companies will wait, depending on your skill set
Hmm.
and quite often your experience. People will try and find someone, and they might wait for them. I mean, a company like ourselves, we probably have on at any one time 15 to 20 vacancies across the company. So we're not huge. Some of those will be engineers, some of those will be in customer support, some will be in logistics, etc. So, there's roles in all the kind of, J1, J9 functions, if you like, in any company.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth remembering. Just because a company does a particular
Definitely.
technology doesn't mean there's no roles and everything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And I know you make that point a lot as well. So people will wait for the right person. They'll also be happy to interview and put people on put them on the bench, if you like, because we win projects. So a company like ourselves, we've had pretty steady growth. I mean, we're a healthy company. And as we win projects or we pitch for projects and we may win them, kind of makes sense to have resources identified that you can pull in. So I think the message is always just start early because people will come back to you. I mean, companies that are churning through lots of people, maybe less so, but certainly those companies who are trying to find individuals with really good skills that they can apply and grow. There's a number of times we'll have a chat with someone, there's nothing there. 6 months later, a year later, you give them a bell. They're either not happy where they are or whatever, and you may come across. So yeah, start early.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree with you. There's no real point, is there, in any business really? If someone says, I don't want to see you for 3 months, they don't want to see you for 3 months. But unless you ask the question, you're never going to know what the timeline is
Yeah, exactly.
in the
And to be
process.
honest, you should also go for every interview. I mean, unless you're clearly not going to bother going to that particular company, you should go for every interview because you just don't know where it leads. And quite often, people I've met through your services, I've chatted to them and we haven't got a gap or they don't quite fit, and I've shoved them to other companies because
Yeah,
I go, do you know what? I know these guys over here, and
yeah,
you would be perfect. And that might be geography, might be skills, might be gaps we have.
yeah.
So I think that happens, and I think it probably happens in other communities. Certainly happens in amongst my network, and I think that's always the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean we're actively pushing. That's the whole point of the community. Because if you have candidates, then you haven't quite got a job for them. Where
Yeah,
could you see them fitting? And that conversation is just as important as the conversation to say, let's go for an interview or you've got a job,
yeah.
because you're giving that person direction. So if if I was leaving the military and I thought, I'm a good match to this company, how how would I go about getting a role? Where would I go for that?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I mean, it depends on the size and scale of the company, how they operate. I mean, some companies will have huge HR teams who do all the kind of sifting and bits and pieces. So I tend to try and look after service leaver recruiting, although I've got, more than one day job as well.
Yeah.
So I do a bit of, so for us, I do a little bit of outreach.
Okay.
But the also reality is we're on your website and on your portal, and people can go on our website, and I guess that'll be included, I guess, at some point. But so
Yeah.
they go on the website. There's a bunch of jobs. They can register interest for those particular jobs. www.nssslglobal.com. It's kind of pretty obvious. Register for jobs. But quite often, what I do when I come to your events and we do the webinars is there'll be people, or when I do the face-to-face events, there'll be people I grab a card for because I know that we haven't got that job or we need to grow a little bit here in order to position that
Yeah.
person through. So there's a kind of the formal process route, which is into HR via the website, apply for a job, come and get an interview, you know, crack on, if that works through. And there's also a kind of parallel channel I have with certain individuals where I kind of trying to work out where they might fit in the business. But yeah, I mean, generally that's the process. And the other thing I say to people is don't worry about getting it right first time.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I'm only on my second company in 13 years, which is not necessarily the norm.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people I know, particularly more senior people, will bounce through jobs very, very quickly, which again is not necessarily the right thing to do. But you don't have to get it right first time. It's not like a posting. You're not going to have to hang it out for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You can kind of do 6 months or less and learn. And that's the other thing. I don't think necessarily landing into your first job sometimes is not a comfortable experience. There's a lot of things that are changing for people when they
Yeah.
leave the military.
Yeah.
Um, and companies know that. Companies like ourselves, who've got a lot of service leavers, know that. Um, some organizations may not understand that. So you don't have to get it right first time.
Mm.
You're going to learn from your first experience. You might learn some new skills. You might learn about things you like and don't like about working with people who may not be like-minded. I mean, I know the military is diverse, but we also think in certain ways,
Yeah.
and we kind of we approach work and values in certain ways. So I think there's a bit of kind of shocker capture can happen. So yeah, don't panic about not getting it right first time. Um,
Yeah.
because you can go somewhere else if you need to. But we tend people that join us, certainly NSSL Global. We've got a lot of people in our company who've done decades in the company. They
Yeah.
either last 6 months, sorry, they either don't last 6 months
Yeah.
or they're there forever. And
Yeah.
it's either because what we do, I mean, we take, what we do, providing critical communications, welfare communications to defence and government, fundamentally there's a value proposition in that. It's an important thing. I mean, most of our team that work Navy or ex-Navy, they're putting services onto ships at short notice for urgent operational requirements. And obviously, you know, early March, there's a lot going on, and clearly we're stretched
Yeah.
with demands. And I think so. What we do, I think we see value in it. I think we take it very seriously. So there's that dimension which I think is important, and that might not be the case in every company. So I think part of the reason people stay with us is they get carried along with the momentum of basically kind of being on the other side of the fence, but still adding back.
Yeah.
Maybe solving some grudges or issues they're challenged with. I mean, certainly myself, having done, and you've done as well, John, you've been at the end of a damp piece of string
Yeah.
a number of times. I kind of want to make that better for people
Yeah.
doing the jobs I used to do. And I
Yeah.
think quite a few of the people in the company are like that.
Yeah. I mean, environments are what we talk about all the time. You're far more likely to find your great job in a great environment. I'm not saying
Yeah,
you won't move out to a business at all, but if you're going into environments like I went into, and I had 4 jobs in my first 2 years, they just weren't environments for me.
yeah, exactly.
So I moved around quite a lot. So I kind of effectively was in transition for 2 extra years after I left until
Yeah,
I found my place.
and that journey you had has led you to where you are now, where you've kind of
Yeah.
learned from that and you've decided to do this. So yeah, I think don't worry about getting right first time. Go for every interview that might lead to something. Start early. It can be hard yards, and that's why I think you've
Oh
you've
yeah,
turned it into the hunter thing. And the other thing I think you also emphasize, and I would as well, is people are really busy. Um, even HR teams are really busy. BD guys like me are really busy, and so there's an element of if you lean in on something, then people are more likely to take you seriously. It's
yeah,
not it's not being desperate. It's if you're positive and you lean in,
yeah.
I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, I mean the hunter versus the sleepwalker, and in the middle you have your hoper. The business hasn't got time to look after the hoper.
No.
They need to see you. You've got to
Yeah.
have that mentality, and we're pushing that all the time. And people who have that mentality are far more likely to be successful and get what they want because they're being seen by the companies, by the hirers all the time,
Yeah,
knocking the
absolutely.
doors down, if
Yeah.
you like.
And I think, I mean, again, we don't necessarily use a lot of AI tools and bits and pieces that some of the bigger organizations might use or recruiters, all that keyword searching, all that sifting, some of these things can be barriers to people. So I think the hunter approach is really good. And also just meeting people for a chat. I mean, I've done that a few times after your face-to-face events. It's just meeting people for coffee and a chat, and that's either ended with them being better informed about their
Yeah.
options and going elsewhere,
Hmm.
or it's ended up with them
Yeah.
coming to us. Um,
Yeah.
so
Well,
yeah,
I think that's the beauty of it as well, because for every job that somebody gets in your business, those are the 100 conversations you have are really important for them because it gives them
yeah.
that direction, that mentality. But talking about mentality and kind of transition, we'll finish because clearly this kind of podcast is for those out on the 30-minute runs or going to and fro from work who are in transition, if you like. I know there's thousands of these that you could probably mention, but if you were going to give a service leaver three golden nuggets on how to leave correctly or properly, what would they be?
So I might be in danger of repeating myself, but that's never a bad thing, is it? Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you've
Tell them
told them.
again.
I remember that kind of thing. Um, Start early. Absolutely start early. Um, don't worry about landing perfectly first time. And I think the third one is be confident, but not overconfident.
Yeah,
Um, a lot of people in the military have a lot of skills and experience. Um, and I think listing lots of qualifications on a CV is all well and good. So be confident about the experience people have had, particularly operational experience or organizational experience, and relate it to where you're going to be going. Um, if you've been a sergeant major, a det commander, a troopie, run complex programs, and in defense, a lot of people run quite complicated projects and programs. They just either haven't recognized it
yeah,
or they can't translate it. So,
yeah,
so be confident about your skills and experience, relate it to the job you're going to, but don't be overconfident because there's a lot to learn out there. Um, it is a different environment.
yeah,
Um, but people do, respect experience, respect a bit of humility. Um, and then if you land right first time, then great.
yeah. I mean, the points are all sound. The last one I like to pick up on the confidence or the overconfidence or ego or whatever you want to call it
Mm.
all. Jason Fox at the last event
Yeah,
picked
yeah,
up on that. And
yeah,
one of the things we're trying to do is clearly you will understand who you're interviewing because you've been in the forces and you've sat
yeah,
where they are. But other businesses will not have been in the forces and they're kind of probably looking at this individual thinking, why are they speaking like that? Or they seem
yeah,
to
yeah,
be very anxious or stressful. So instead of just putting everyone in a room and saying, let's do a job fair, what we're really trying to do is teach everybody what they're about to meet. And of course, the pathways become a lot clearer, and people will
yeah.
probably start seeing through people who maybe lack confidence or the opposite and have too much confidence and just see them as a normal person. And I think that's the kind of areas we're getting to within our community field.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because people, you know, particularly people who aren't military, will watch TV and they
Yeah,
assume that a corporal does certain things, a sergeant does certain things, and actually on the other side of the house, I was interviewed for the job at NSSL, and there was a kind of, well, you are going to do some work, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, 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 absolutely. So people have perceptions of various roles in the military, and so that is just the reality of baggage. And I think the key thing is making sure you relate your experience to where you're going. And just, fill up the kettle, change the loo roll, be a good bloke, or be a good person.
yeah,
All those little things that we know from being deck commanders, troop commanders, whatever. They are people, they are values that we bring into stuff, just day-to-day stuff. And then people will embrace you, help with your challenges,
yeah.
help you develop your skills. And that's important. That's really important.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that. It's a great way to finish because it's what I struggled with in my first job. I still thought I was in the military running a managerial area of a business and I ran it like the military and I just wasn't me.
Yeah,
But all of the staff was just like, what is going on here?
yeah.
So I can imagine I was an absolute nightmare for that first job. But again, I realized that and it's probably where it led me now.
Yeah, and I just think, biting your tongue occasionally and just thinking before, I mean, basic stuff, thinking before you speak. I mean, I mean, when I was younger, I maybe would have been slightly different in the way I approach things now,
Yeah,
but there's reasons why things are done in certain ways, and I think you just need to adjust to that a bit. I think, and your experience is really valuable because it helps what you do now. So,
yeah,
so I guess that's the whole point. So yeah, yeah,
yeah.
start early. Don't worry about getting it right first time. Be confident, but don't be overconfident.
Fantastic. And guys, if when you're listening to this or you're watching this, you know straight away if this is something you want to do, you come straight through our website and you can listen to and read other things about NSSL Global, and of course we can then get you straight through to them if you want as well. But have a look on their website and check out what the jobs are and see if it really does relate to you. But a great way to finish there. Three great golden nuggets as always. But personally, I just want to thank you, Neil, for continuing to believe in what we're doing, for pushing everything through each year, because I know that how difficult your job is and how busy you are, and getting to many of our events as well when you're all over the world, which I can see all over social media.
Yeah,
I know where you are next. I think you do more countries than Santa Claus. But
yeah,
personally, I do want to thank you, and I can't, look forward to working through the rest of 2026 with you
yeah.
and into the future. And it's people like yourself that are helping as part of a community, this togetherness that we hope in the future will solve the transitional space and the problems that people are having in it right now. So thank you so much for being part of it, as
No
always.
worries. And thanks, Sean. Thanks for your time. Good to chat as ever. And yeah, catch you the next one.